Or as you can see, it's bumper.
Got a bird's eye view, and it certainly doesn't look good from up here.
The tank is full, the engine's humming. Those wide open roads are beckoning. So sit back and get ready for Motoring 88. Brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will. This week on Motoring 88.
They are single-seat, pure racing cars, what you might expect with a Formula One car, but certainly not as expensive.
Very imprecise, very slow, very out of balance, certainly no way efficient enough to avoid crashing.
And that's why I think I like driving the most. I think this is the only time people don't know that I use a wheelchair.
You're looking at a Buick Lucerne, a Buick of the future. Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Motoring 88, and it is the future that we're going to talk about over the next half hour. At least the future according to General Motors. But first I want to show you this. You ever lose your keys like I do? Well, look at this, a keyless car. Here we go. Not bad, eh? Now, like, if you can have a look at that dashboard, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the future, whether you like it or not. But first, let's begin in the present and join our Steve Grant, who has a story about one of the oldest forms of car racing.
Well, it's certainly not Indianapolis, and it's certainly not Florida. But this is where a lot of open-wheeled racers get their start, Midget racing.
Well, the Can-Am three-quarter midget racing club started about 25 years ago. Started a couple of Americans, a couple of Canadians got together, and they like this type of racing. This type of racing is about 50 years old. Started in New Jersey in the 1930s. They are single-seat, pure racing cars, very much what you might expect with a Formula One car, but certainly not as expensive. They have specialized equipment, quick change rear ends, full race gear right throughout. So they're a very pure single-seat open-wheel racing car.
You won't find any Roger Penske's here, but the competition is fierce. Also on the card tonight are what they call the junkyard dogs. The name speaks for itself, and only the strongest survive.
This is where it all started. You know, you go into a lot of small towns in Ontario, they all have speedways, and this is where drivers get the opportunity to come out and race and then go on to other things. We have a touring circuit that goes from track to track, and we're racing in front of grassroots crowds, the Friday night and Saturday night stock car crowds, and believe me, there's got to be 50 to 60,000 people every weekend in Ontario going to car races. What we have here certainly would be people who have come every Friday night. They brought their kids. They probably are here with a grandfather who was here when the track started. Quite a number of our drivers have gone on to super modified. That's the big 900 horsepower cars that run on 5/8 mile ovals. A couple of the drivers that have come out of TQ Racing, Mario Andretti is a good example. Mario started in North America with the American three-quarter midget racing club, and that's one of our sister organizations, so it definitely is a stepping stone.
You're a lot younger than a lot of the other drivers around here. How'd you ever get into this?
My father's one of the founders of the club, and I was basically raised on it and kind of grew into it, and here I am. This is a stepping stone, definitely, because eventually I want to get into super modifieds. So down the road someday, we'll see what happens.
It's a stepping stone down. I ran full-size midgets on dirt in Australia for 4 years. So this is a totally different concept. I've got, how'd you say, experience with dirt. I'm used to going sideways, I'm not used to going in a straight line. That's my problem.
These midget cars are actually a lot safer than they look. First of all, you have a complete roll bar that protects you in case of an accident or a roll or anything. You have the 5-point seat belt, and in case anything does happen, you do have these arm restraints to protect your arms from going literally anywhere. I'm ready.
It gets extremely hairy, but I don't think it's dangerous. I can honestly say, to my knowledge, I've never heard anybody ever talk about a major serious injury in our type of racing. We emphasize, we're a sanctioning body, and we emphasize very, very much safety being built into the cars.
Great, Andy. I'm just playing with the throttle, Bruce. I can't even.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I can spin it any time I want it.
Obviously, darkness isn't a problem. As the feature race looms, drivers and mechanics are forced to squint over their engines.
Coming out of turn 4, green flag, and away they go.
You got a good crowd here tonight. You see a lot of good racing here?
A lot of good racing. We think we have the best racing in Ontario. We call it the Daytona of the North. And for a quarter-mile oval, we get some pretty good entertainment here.
Nobody's getting rich in this series. Sponsorship is limited, and it's not too often they get television coverage. But winning is just as important here as it is at Indianapolis.
This is the official trophy for winning this feature on Saturday night, Can-Am TQ Midget. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hey, Arnie. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. All right.
There you go. All right.
Arnie, a great race, but I have to ask you about the garbage bag around your neck.
Oh, I thought it was going to rain, but no, really, it was getting kind of cold, and I never brought a jacket. So it's the only thing I could come up with.
A lot of bumping out there, a lot of cars.
Yeah, really. I thought the caution went out there once. I saw sparks going as high as the all darn lights out there, and I thought the caution light come on. I put my hand up like that, and I looked, the green light's still on. So.
So it was a sweet victory then.
Yeah, it was really good to get. That's about 3 years before I got one here that was legal anyway.
This is the Pontiac Banshee. It's a concept car for the next generation Firebird. As you can see, there are no door handles. The doors open with the infrared signal from the wristwatch. These seat backs pivot forward to get into the rear. The front seat itself just moves up and down. The steering column pedals all move out to you. You have 2 memory controls. So when you set it to where you want it, you just touch your memory, everything moves back to where you had it set. We have the rear view camera, take the place of your rear view mirror. The satellite navigation, which shows you where you are on the road at all times. The electronic compass and navigational computer to help you in your planning your trips as far as trip times and directional headings. And when you get out, everything moves back out of your way. Here's some of the features you'll see in a Firebird of the future.
Coming up on Motoring 88, eyeing the Isuzu.
Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. The engine in the new Quaker State Porsche Indy car develops 750 horsepower. That's why it takes Quaker State oil with new QSX to protect it. At 11,000 RPM, engine temperatures soar. Quaker State's new advanced QSX formula is proven to run clean for unbeatable protection. And the new QSX formula that protects this engine on the track is the same Quaker State you buy right off the shelf. Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
What exactly does Nissan mean by hard body truck? Well, let's say you want a V6 engine. A powerful V6 engine. What exactly does Nissan mean by hard body truck? Well, let's say you want to help someone move.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
Come on, Graham, it's time for test drive. All ready?
This week, Brad, we're going to be looking at the 1988 Isuzu I-Mark Turbo. What's interesting about this is the fact that it is turbo. It's a relatively small 1.5 litre engine, but when you couple a turbo to the engine, it makes a substantial difference. As you'll see when we hit the skid pad. You know, the acceleration times are going to be well under 10 seconds, which is great for a little car like this.
Turbos are becoming quite the toys of the 80s, aren't they?
Oh yeah. Well, everybody's using one of 2 methods to get more power out of a small engine. You either go multi-valve or you go turbo. It's an interesting fact. Whenever you think Japanese, you think Honda or Toyota or Nissan or Mazda or somebody like that. But it's interesting to note that Isuzu produced the first car from Japan, or in Japan. Now we're on the skid pad. Let's start our usual tests and try the 0 to 100 kilometer time. Isuzu should be quite quick because of the turbo.
All right, let's go. little squealing there.
Certainly. The turbo's quite quick. The problem with this thing is it lags when you initially pull away and it dies, and then all of a sudden when the turbo comes in, look out. 9.4 for a small car is very respectable, Brad. Next test, Brad, is going to be through the pylons, and this is to find out how well it actually handles. The suspension on this thing is firm, and so it'll handle very nicely.
It's real tight.
Yeah,
Right.
it is very nice. For a small car, the handling capability is terrific. And you need that with the turbo. Let's put the brakes through their paces, and we'll use the old decelerometer here to measure the exact distance required to stop.
Okay.
We're going to come round and get up to speed right now. We're doing it around about 55 now. When we get to 80, I'm going to hit the brakes. Are you ready?
Okay.
Quite respectable. Quite respectable. We were pulling around 26 on the decelerometer, which will be about 110 feet. What made the Isuzu so peppy on the skid pad was the fact that it's turbocharged, and you get a beautiful look at the turbo up front here. My pet peeve, however, is at the back, and it's when you use the rear view mirror, you get a very impeded view of what's going on behind you. That aside, let's go to the scoreboard and see how I rated the I-Mark Turbo. I awarded the brakes 6 out of 10 because I found them a little too sensitive. The handling characteristics of this little car are great, but the suspension is on the firm side, and so you tend to feel the minor bumps. Great is the only word to describe the acceleration, but you'll have to learn to live with the above average noise level because of the way the engine whines when it's pushed. In our test car, we averaged a very respectable 33 miles per gallon. Next week, we're going to be looking at the Toyota Celica 4-wheel drive.
Why would a driving instructor have a hammer and a saw? I'll show you later on Behind the Wheel.
Next on Motoring 88, getting a grip on tires.
If you've been dreaming about owning a Corvette, well, General Motors has also been dreaming, and this is GM's Dream Corvette of the future. And they tell me with a few variations, this car could be on the road in the early 1990s. But you know, despite all the new technology and new design, one thing I've noticed is that all these cars are running on rubber tires. And tires are what Bill Gardiner wants to talk about this week.
All right. There's an awful lot of information written on the sidewall of a tire, and you may be wondering what all these figures mean. For example, P195/75 R14 tire. P for passenger, 195 millimeters wide. 75% is the aspect ratio. It's 75% as high as it is wide. R for radial ply construction, and it goes on a 14-inch rim. Okay, here's where these numbers come into play. If you're just replacing one tire, for example, you'd have to buy another tire just like this, a 75 series all-season tire. But if you'd worn out all 4 tires and you want to replace all 4 tires in that vehicle, you could upgrade to this lower, wider 70 series tire. Again, this tire, 70 series, it's 70% as high as it is wide. Wider, lower tire, better grip on the road. Here's a couple of examples of abnormal tire wear, conditions that are caused by misalignment of the front wheels on the car. This tire has started to feather on the edge here because it was towed in, and eventually this is what will happen. Completely worn out on the edge, but still about 50% of the tread remaining on the other side. Here's a tire that's well worn, but evenly worn all the way across. You can see the wear bars exposed on this tire right here. These bars are built in underneath the tire tread, and when they become flush and exposed across a number of ribs, that tire is worn out. Time to be replaced. The number one cause of premature tire wear is underinflation, so checking the tire inflation pressure is a very important procedure to do in your car as often as possible. Remove the cap, purge a little bit of air out of the valve to clean the valve of any water and grit, and then push your tester on and take the reading. Keeping tires at the correct inflation pressure is very important for maximum tire life and best vehicle handling. Until next week, I'm Bill Gardiner for Motoring 88.
And Now, behind the wheel with Charlie Goodman.
Today, we are going to use these tools to illustrate to you one of the most common mistakes that people make when they're turning the steering wheel. If I were hammering a nail into this table, would it not look rather silly if I were hammering using the back muscles? Much too slow, much too imprecise, no accuracy at all. No, rather, very quick motions made from the arm and the shoulder. How about with this saw? Again, using the back muscles only, my goodness, I never get the job done. No, from the arm, from the shoulder, very quick, very precise. Well, this same principle also applies to driving with the steering wheel. Come with me, and I'll show you what I mean. Now that we're in the car, let's see how this applies to steering. Because interestingly enough, what we get is people, when trying to make evasive maneuvers to avoid crashing, steer the car using their back muscles. And what we get is something that looks like this. Very imprecise, very slow, very out of balance, certainly no way efficient enough to avoid crashing. What you should be doing is positioning the seat back using the rake adjustment here at the side, so that in raking the seat we can achieve the benchmark of putting our wrist comfortably on top of the steering wheel, so that in this position, as we move our arms down to the 9-3 position, the arms are hanging very loosely, lots of flexation available, and as I start up this car, you will notice how I can turn the steering wheel 220 degrees in either direction with no tension in the back, no tension in the neck muscles whatsoever. Very fast, very precise, very smooth, the type of motion that you need to help you when the chips are down and you're trying to survive. Next week, a very exciting segment on Behind the Wheel. We're going to illustrate to you how tire pressures help your car maneuver when you need it the most.
What? You want to give me a big hug, Jennifer? Okay, give me a big squeeze. Oh yeah. Melanie, you too. Okay. Okay, you guys, come on, let's go look at some more cars, okay? There's lots over here. See you later, guys.
When Motoring 88 returns, removing the obstacles.
Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. The engine in the new Quaker State Porsche IndyCar develops 750 horsepower. That's why it takes Quaker State oil with new QSX to protect it. At 11,000 RPM, engine temperatures soar. Quaker State's new advanced QSX formula is proven to run clean for unbeatable protection. And the new QSX formula that protects this engine on the track is the same Quaker State you buy right off the shelf. Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Well, I can't say it brings back memories of my old Volkswagen Beetle. And you know, it's true, every year they add new gadgets and toys to automobiles, but still the basics of driving remain the same. And I suppose most of us take driving for granted. But that's not the case for everyone. Here's Sandra Neal with that story.
Chances are you don't think a lot about the interior of vehicles when you're driving, but the next time you're at a stoplight, the driver beside you just may be using different devices to operate his vehicle than you are.
To the best of my knowledge, there's been quadriplegics driving for about 25 years, but I don't think it's really been available to most of them until the last 7 or 8 years, maybe even a little bit less than that. They get their driver's license basically in the same manner that you or I would. They have special classes and training, but they get their license the same as you and I.
What conversion would you do in a car, say for someone that has had polio and has weak leg strength?
Just somebody like that, that would be just a regular set of hand controls. I mean, I call them regular because we see them every day. It's just a simple mechanical mechanism that operates the gas and the brake by usually the left hand, and they steer with the right.
I've been working here for about 4 years now, and I found it really interesting. I'm just overjoyed. I'm overjoyed with, just seeing them able to drive. It's just, the point is, I like to see things like that. It's like you've done something after you finished your job, and they're out and they're waving to you, see you later, it's just, it's amazing, just the equipment out there for them to drive. This is Bruce Winslow's van. He's a quadriplegic, and we do it for his independency. to be independent. He can do what he wants, when he wants, whenever he wants. When he comes up on the lift, straight even with the thing, he just rolls up and he positions himself on the power pan. Now the switch here brings down the power pan, which I just show you a bit here, brings it up and down, okay? Once he's down to the just eye level, he'd bring his steering down, which go like this. The main three controls are on the top that Bruce works with. There's ignition, start, and the shifter that shift these three lights. You got park, reverse, and drive. This is how he uses the foot controls, vacuum braking gas called the VBG.
So those are his pedals?
Yeah, it's upper pedals. It's all controlled by vacuum. And it's very, very light to the touch, very light to the touch.
Bruce Winslow has been driving around town for the past 4 years. He became a quadriplegic from a diving accident 9 years ago. It took about 5 years before he acquired the strength and the courage to drive, and now he spends most of his time behind the wheel in his customized van.
When I first started driving, I thought I'd be, pick it up just like I did a regular vehicle. But when I drove, I couldn't drive faster than about 60 kilometers an hour. Just the wind would catch the van, or the steering is very sensitive. And it took me about a year before I could drive at speeds for the highway.
Looking for thunder shower activity in the afternoon tomorrow, a high of 33. So it appears will be cloudy tonight and warm, and thunder showers tomorrow.
DavidOnnelly is an environment specialist on City TV in Toronto. Because of his limited disability when walking, David uses portable hand controls to drive.
It's very easy. I really don't think twice about it any more than anyone who is not using hand controls would think twice about it. I mean, I just activate the handbrake when it's necessary to slow the car down, and when I want to accelerate, I just simply pull back on the hand throttle, and of course away we go. The hand controls that I've got here are very easily installed. They're very easily implemented into the automobile, and fortunately my disability is such that it did not require a tremendously costly conversion of the car to enable me to drive.
Not everyone can afford to get a van like this converted. It costs about $30,000. So some travelers opt for a special kind of public transportation.
Wheel-trans service is predominantly used by the disabled community for anybody who cannot board normal services such as the subway or the trolley buses or streetcars.
Why would they opt for your service then? Is it more cost efficient?
Cost efficient, the same as yourself. You use public transportation to go downtown, the downtown core, and to avoid the driving.
Now, if I would see this van beside me, would I know that I would be beside a physically challenged driver?
No, I don't think you would. I don't even know. Put it that way. There's so many out there that I don't even know. Just the only way I can tell is by the license plate.
Now, it must be a great feeling to be able to drive side by side with other drivers, and they can't even tell that you're using different devices, can they?
No, and that's why I think I like driving the most. I think this is the only time people don't know that I use a wheelchair.
Where there's a future, there is a past. And in this case, the past is a 1910 McLaughlin Buick. The price tag, they tell me, back then was $800. Today, it's simply priceless. Well, that's it for now. Next week, Motoring 88 will move east to the Maritimes. We'll be in Moncton, New Brunswick. We'll see you then. I wonder how long it would take me to get to Moncton in this.
Next week on Motoring 88.
Next to Indianapolis, which nobody can really compete against, is one of the biggest drawing circuits that we have, and that's great. That's one of the reasons why I love coming up here, because it seems like the Canadian people really follow our series.
Here, you're braking, accelerating, changing gear, 30 times a lap and stuff like that. There's a constant movement, left, right,
Too much lean, too much squeal, too much noise. It's very vague. We're going to have to do something to improve this.
If you have any questions or suggestions, drop us a line at Motoring 88. 379 Danforth Avenue, Toronto. M4K 1P1. Motoring 88 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.